Hi, welcome to the shed. Today we're going to talk about rhythmic transcription. It's one of the most important things to be able to do as a producer and as a composer and as an improviser, but it's also one of the most difficult. So I'm going to give you a 4-step process that'll allow you to transcribe any rhythm, whether it's really simple or it's super complex. So our steps are finding the pulse, then the meter, the subdivision, and finally the rhythm. So the states of rhythm, the attacks, the sustains, the releases, and rests. Quick side note, there are a lot of apps out there that help with transcription, that slow things down, that loop things for you. They're great, but I want to rely on the one piece of tech that I'm going to have with me no matter where I go. I'm going to rely on this. I'm going to use this as my recorder. I'm going to use this as my playback device. I'm going to use that as my slow downer. Now, the way that that works is you have to memorize the music. You have to listen to it so much that it becomes part of you. So we're going to transcribe just this one measure ostinato figure as part of this little loop here. So here's a loop and sound trap. We're going to listen to it. I want you to try to memorize what it sounds like. Memorize everything. Memorize the drum part. Memorize the bass part. Memorize the piano part. But what we're going to transcribe is that little ostinato figure. That's what we're going to transcribe. So let's listen to it one more time together. Just let it seep in. The more you do this, the better you get at it. It's a learned skill. All right, so now if you're listening to a long piece, like if you want to learn a big jazz solo, maybe you memorize it in chunks, but live with it. Listen to it all the time. Listen to it when you wake up. Listen to it before you go to sleep. Live the song until it's part of you, and that's going to make the transcription process a lot smoother. So let's get into our method. Step 1, you need to find the pulse. The pulse is where you tap your foot. It's the beat of the music. So I'm going to play the music, and I want you to tap your foot to the beat. So here we go. Ready? Go. Tap your foot. All right, once you can find the pulse, then we're ready to move on to the next step. That next step is to find the meter. So the pulse or the beat is grouped into measures, and that grouping is called the meter. That's how many beats or pulses are in one measure. In order to find the meter, you have to identify where the beat resets. You have to see where 1 is. So I'm going to play the loop again, and I want you to clap on where you think 1 is, where you think the whole thing, like the drum groove, the bass line, where you think the measure repeats. Not the whole phrase. This is a longer phrase, but where you feel each measure repeats. So here we go. Just clap where you think 1 is. Okay, now I want you to say 1 on beat 1. 1. 1. Now count the rest of the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is in a meter of 4. There are 4 beats in each measure. So we found the pulse. Now we found the meter. Now we're ready to find the subdivision. So the subdivision is how many times the beat is being divided equally. And if you have a steady beat, and if you have an attack inside that beat, you have a subdivision. So against any steady beat, so here's my steady beat. Against this, if I put an attack inside this beat anywhere, I have to have a subdivision. That subdivision creates a grid in which events can occur. And the most common subdivisions are 2, 3, 4, and 6. So what I like to do is I like to practice just ticking the subdivision because that's part of the process that I use to figure out subdivisions. So if I'm subdividing 2, I'm going t, 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 t. I'm being the hi-hat. If I subdivide 3, I'm going t, 4, 6. Now each of these have syllables, so we have like 1 and, 1 pull et, 1 e and, 1 ipple and leto. We have syllables for the different parts of the beat, but it's important to be able to just tick it, because if you could tick it, then you could check it. So here's just an example. I'm gonna click a beat, and then I'm gonna place in a subdivision. I'm gonna tap here. I'm gonna tap in an attack rather, not a subdivision. So here's the beat: 1, 1, All right, so what is that? I'm going to check it against my eighth note. So it didn't line up with that. Here's my eighth note triplet. Didn't line up with that. Here's my 16th note. So it lined up with that. So when you're figuring out the subdivision, you're finding which division creates the grid in which the attack you're looking for exists. So I heard that it was actually the of 2 landed right inside that subdivision. So that's something you need to practice. Practice feeling those different subdivisions against your foot, because if you can memorize what it feels like against your foot, it's just going to help you out. It's going to help you out if you're feeling that in your body. So we're going to listen to our loop, and we're going to figure out what the bass subdivision is of that ostinato figure. So here it is. Sing along with it. Da, 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 da. So I'm gonna tick along with it, and I'm gonna try to figure out where the shortest distance between two notes are. So here we go. Here's eighth notes. Okay, it's not eighth notes. Here's eighth note triplets. No, it's not eighth note triplets. Here's 16th notes. That's it. It's 16th notes. And the hi-hat's actually playing 16th notes in this groove, and everything's going to line up with those 16th notes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our 4 beats, and now I'm going to create a grid of 16th notes. So we have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Now that we have the pulse, we have the meter, we have the subdivision, we're ready to move on to figuring out the rhythm. We need to figure out where the attacks, sustains, releases, and rests are. Now, this ostinato part, all the notes are really short. There aren't any sustained notes. There's no duration. So we're not going to be talking about releases and rests, or releases and sustains. We're just going to be talking about attacks and rests. And this is where your little tape recorder in your head's going to come in handy. So let's listen to it one more time. Get it into your memory. Sing it along. Now what we're going to do is we're going to count. We're going to subdivide out loud. We're going to get our foot tapping. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're tapping to the pulse, to the meter. We're going to subdivide. We're going to say 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, and then we're going to clap the rhythm of that ostinato. Now this process of taking the rhythm out, it takes time to be able to hear the rhythm, to subdivide with it, and then to take it out of context and to clap it, but the more you do it, the faster you get at it. So we have 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2. The first attack's on beat 2. All right, so I'm going to mark that down as an attack. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E. The next one's on the E of 3. I'm going to mark that down. Start back at the beginning. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a. I'm feeling it against my foot. My foot just went up. It comes all the way up on the and there's an attack there, so I'm going to mark it down. Back to the beginning. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4. On beat 4. I'm going to mark that in. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. The last note, the last attack is on the of 4. So once you have what you think is written down, now you have to check it, because we're relying on this tape recorder, and it can make mistakes. I mean, the more you do it, the better it's going to get, but you can always make a mistake in translation. So it's kind of like if you've ever played the game telephone, where you tell your friend something and they tell their friend something else, and it ends up coming around and you're like, it has nothing to do with what it started as. That can happen in your head. You can have a translation error, but you can always check it. So we're going to play the music back, and we are going to clap what we have. So we're going to count with what we have. Here we go. Ready, play. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. That's the method. Now, the more you do this, the more you rely on this as your transcription device, the better you'll get. Eventually, all these steps will compress down until some of them become instant. Maybe you only have to figure out the subdivision. Maybe figuring out the pulse and the meter is just like an instinctual thing. Eventually, you'll get to a point where you don't even have to think about the subdivision. You'll just know against your foot, that was the of 4, and you already have the rhythm. But there will be situations where you go to transcribe something and you'll have no idea what's going on rhythmically. In those situations, go back to the steps. Find the pulse, find the meter, find the subdivision, and find the rhythm. Good luck, and we'll see you in the shed.